This German cult trained children to torture their own parents. The valley looked peaceful from a distance. Nestled among the rolling hills of central Chile stood a settlement surrounded by fences, watchtowers, and secrecy. To passing travelers, it appeared to be nothing more than a hard-working agricultural community founded by German immigrants. The fields were neat. The buildings were clean. The residents seemed disciplined and devoted. But behind the gates existed one of the darkest cults in modern history. For decades, children grew up without knowing what freedom was. Families were systematically torn apart. Husbands and wives were forbidden from living together. Parents were separated from their own children. Every aspect of life was monitored. And in some of the colony's most disturbing practices, children were manipulated into becoming instruments of control against their own families. This was the story of Colonia Dignidad, and it began with a man who claimed he was saving souls. His name was Paul Schaefer. Before arriving in Chile, Schaefer had already built a following in Germany. To his supporters, he appeared charismatic, deeply religious, and devoted to helping troubled children. But beneath that carefully crafted image lurked something far darker. By the late 1950s, allegations of child abuse began to surface around Schaefer. As investigations closed in, he made a decision that would change hundreds of lives forever. He fled Germany, but he did not flee alone. Taking a group of loyal followers with him, Schaefer traveled thousands of miles across the Atlantic Ocean to Chile. There, in an isolated region far from major cities, he purchased vast stretches of land and began constructing what he described as a Christian utopia. The settlement was officially established in 1961. Its name was Colonia Dignidad, which translates to Colony of Dignity. The name could not have been more misleading. From the beginning, Schaefer designed the colony to function as a closed world. Members were encouraged to cut ties with relatives outside the community. Communication with outsiders was tightly controlled. Children were separated from their parents almost immediately. The family unit, which normally provides protection and emotional support, represented a threat to Schaefer's authority. If parents remained emotionally connected to their children, their loyalty might belong to each other rather than to him. So he dismantled the family structure itself. Children lived in separate dormitories. Mothers and fathers rarely spent time with them. Physical affection became rare. In some cases, children were taught to view emotional attachment as weakness. Instead of family bonds, the colony offered only one source of authority: Paul Schaefer. Residents were taught that he possessed special wisdom. His instructions were treated as unquestionable truth. Soon, the colony developed a culture of surveillance unlike anything many of the children had ever known. Everyone watched everyone. Every conversation could be reported. Every mistake could be punished. Children quickly learned that informing on parents earned approval from authority figures. Parents learned that their own children might be listening. The result was a society built on fear. Many former residents would later describe growing up in an environment where trust became impossible. Imagine living in a place where your own son or daughter might be encouraged to report your private thoughts. Imagine never knowing whether a casual remark could result in punishment. That uncertainty became a weapon. Schaefer understood something fundamental about power. People become easier to control when they feel isolated. And nothing isolates a person more effectively than destroying the trust within their own family. As years passed, discipline inside the colony became increasingly severe. Residents worked long hours. Punishments were common. Criticism of leadership was forbidden. Children who disobeyed could be subjected to harsh disciplinary measures. Former members later described psychological manipulation, public humiliation, and constant indoctrination. Some recalled being pressured to participate in punishment systems directed at fellow residents, including family members. The goal was simple: break personal loyalties, replace them with obedience. By turning family members against one another, Schaefer ensured that resistance remained rare. But there was another reason the colony became so dangerous. Its isolation made oversight nearly impossible. Visitors were carefully managed. The public image presented to outsiders showed smiling children, productive farms, and a thriving community. Behind the scenes, a very different reality existed. As the years went by, rumors began to spread. Former members who escaped spoke about abuse. Others described brutal punishments. Some claimed the colony operated more like a prison than a religious community. Yet proving those accusations remained difficult. The colony's remote location worked in its favor. Its secrecy protected it. Its loyal members defended it. And powerful political connections would soon make it even more untouchable. In 1973, Chile experienced a military coup. The government of President Salvador Allende collapsed, and General Augusto Pinochet seized power. The dictatorship that followed would become one of the most controversial periods in Chilean history. Thousands of political opponents were arrested. Many disappeared. Many were tortured. And according to later investigations, Colonia Dignidad became connected to some of these operations. Witness testimony and official inquiries eventually suggested that parts of the colony were used by Chilean security services. Former prisoners described being taken to isolated locations where they were interrogated and tortured. The colony's extreme secrecy made it an ideal location for activities hidden from public view. For the residents trapped inside, life became even more frightening. The outside world viewed the colony as mysterious. Those inside experienced it as all-encompassing. Children born there often knew almost nothing about normal life. Their education was tightly controlled. Information was filtered. Independent thinking was discouraged. Many grew up believing the colony represented the entire world. Some did not even understand basic aspects of society beyond the fences. Everything they saw reinforced the same message. The leader was always right. Authority must never be questioned. Obedience was survival. Years turned into decades. Children became adults. A new generation was raised under the same system. And still, the colony endured. But no system built on fear lasts forever. Gradually, survivors escaped. Some managed to reach authorities. Others spoke with journalists. Former residents began sharing stories that painted a horrifying picture of life inside Colonia Dignidad. Investigators started paying closer attention. The image of a peaceful Christian settlement began to crack. The more evidence emerged, the more disturbing the allegations became. Accounts described systematic abuse, forced labor, psychological control, family separation, and a culture of fear that penetrated every aspect of daily life. The very methods that had helped maintain power for decades now became evidence against the colony itself. Former children, now adults, described how manipulation had been woven into their lives from the beginning. Many struggled to build relationships after leaving. Trust had become difficult. Normal family bonds felt unfamiliar. The psychological scars remained long after the fences lost their power. Then, eventually, the man responsible faced justice. In 2005, Paul Schaefer was captured in Argentina after years on the run. For survivors, the arrest represented something many had once considered impossible. The untouchable leader had finally fallen. The man who had controlled generations through fear was no longer beyond reach. Yet even his capture could not erase the damage. Entire childhoods had been stolen. Families had been fractured. Lives had been shaped by trauma that would last for decades. Today, the site still exists under a different name. Visitors can travel there. Some buildings remain. The fields still stretch across the landscape. At first glance, the setting appears peaceful. But beneath that calm exterior lies a history that serves as a warning. Colonia Dignidad demonstrates how ordinary people can become trapped within systems of absolute control. It shows how charismatic leaders can manipulate fear, loyalty, and belief. And perhaps most disturbingly, it reveals how authoritarian systems often begin by attacking the strongest human bond of all, the bond between parent and child. When that bond is broken, power can fill the void. For decades, that was exactly what happened behind the fences of Colonia Dignidad. And the consequences would echo long after the gates were finally opened.